Welcome to the Casey Catch Up. And this fortnight, we catch up on what happened over in WA, Western Australia. Had the King of the Cut. Not many people were able to go because of COVID restrictions, but we had a few from South Australia, a few from Western Australia, and I managed to catch up with Marcus Tardrew, who won the SUP Downwind Foil division, and Crackerjack, Jacyln Nichols, who was second in the women's wing division. A really good call. Going through all things, equipment, conditions, but then also finishing with crackers on where the sport is going, pathways for kids and all that sort of stuff. So I really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys do too. A little Christmas Eve edition for you. I have got a bunch of things I want to share with you guys too. I had a really fun foil camp up at Lennox Head. I managed to get a few sessions in with Mr. Bennett's, but mainly it was really cool to see everyone improve. With 5 people for the camps and everyone improved. Intermediate and beginner. Keep an eye out for dates on ones for 2022, probably looking like middle of winter, sort of May, June sort of area. I've also continuing to do my Talkback Tuesdays, which is similar to this call, but more interactive. So we have, it's all part of the Coach Casey Club membership. You get access to join the chat, ask questions, and every week on Tuesday, basically go through a bunch of questions, a bunch of video for people that want to get into foiling, downwind foiling, wing foiling, surf foiling. So the wing foil course is something I'm looking at building. I'm not promising any dates for that, but it is on its way. It's in the works. Also doing a bit for foil drive downwinding, and also my deflate downwind, reinflate downwind. So that's all in the works. It's all coming. But yeah, thanks everyone for a really good 2021. We think we've made the most of what it could be. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I look forward to reaching out to everyone and get another episode up in the new year. So thanks for following along. And here is the chat with Marcus and Crackers about all things King of the Cut. Enjoy. Hey guys, welcome to the Casey Catch Up. We've got Marcus Tardrew and Crackers, Jacyln Nichols, who both were competitors at the King of the Cut, which was, I guess, the last downwind race that I know of on the foil. Crackers did the wing division. Marcus did the SUP foil division, and it sounded like a pretty epic time on the water. We're going to get a few stories from each of them, talk about conditions, talk about the vibe at the race, and just a little bit of a debrief since I couldn't get there, and I know a lot of other people couldn't get there too. So just live vicariously through those who could do a downwind foil race. So welcome you two. Thanks for teeing up a time. I know it's busy in the Christmas period.
Thanks, Jimmy. How you going?
Yeah. We'll start with Marcus because he's driving to work actually. But I guess, do you want to tell us about, I guess, the equipment you used and the conditions you had, and also the competition that you were up against?
Yeah, sweet. First of all, the conditions were really good. As you know, Jimmy, we have a bit of an issue with weed here, seaweed, and it was probably one of the first races I've done in WA without weed on a foil. So it was a clean run, which is amazing. And yeah, we had good wind from the start. So we probably had about 18 knots from the gun. And the guys who I was competing against, besides Scott McCloskey from South Australia, were all guys I foil with pretty much every day. And they're the most amazing guys. They have learned to downwind foil, some of them since the start of this season, 2 months ago. And they, some of them started towards the end of last season, but it's very impressive, and they're going really quick. Julian, a guy from here especially, who's on the lift 120, who just is flying. It's crazy, and he paddles up that little foil. It's pretty cool. And the conditions were great. The competition was good because we actually had some this year. I think last year I was on my own. Year before we had a couple of guys, and it's definitely really growing. And the equipment and stuff's getting so much better, and doing the run now feels different. I haven't done the run since the race last year, and just with the equipment that's changed over the last 12 months, the run actually felt different purely because of the equipment we're on. So yeah, it's pretty exciting times for the SUP Downwind foiling for sure. It's really growing, and just watching it explode over here and the level of the guys that are getting into it, it's awesome.
Yeah, no, awesome. We'll get into more on that. I want to touch with Crackers as well, because she was doing more the wingding sort of side of things. And so, Crackers, how are the conditions for you and the competition as well? Do you want to give us a little debrief on that?
Yeah, it was really clean, like Marcus said, and just like really nice, smooth runners. So that was really good. Not much wash going on. I took out a 5 metre SMIC wing, and I really wish I'd taken out the 6 metre. I think when we're all standing on the beach, the wingers, it looked like it was a little bit stronger than what it was. And once we got out there, you could feel it was a little bit lighter. So just have that bit of extra speed would have been nice. But it was kind of cool. I had the RS 1000 from Go Foil on. So I had a lot of speed underneath. And it was just fun because because it was a little bit lighter and it wasn't absolutely nuking, you had to time the gusts of wind and your runners really well to maximise your speed. So it was fun. It was challenging and good. I liked it.
And do you know what your competitors were on Crackers? I know you had a pretty good battle with a chick who was from more of a sailing background. You're from more of a surf and SUP background.
Yeah, I didn't get a good look at what Crystal had underneath her board. I'm assuming she actually had a bigger foil, but she had a 4.5 metre wing, and Ange had a 4.5 metre or a 4 metre wing as well. So I definitely had the biggest wing out of the girls, but I'm not sure what they had underneath. But yeah, Crystal, she was just smooth. She didn't stack at once. She pretty much stayed dry, and that was her advantage. She was just that little bit in front of me the whole time, and yeah, she just was relaxed and cruising along. So I think that's what got her over the line.
Yeah, for sure. And do you know what the guy, like the lead, Marcus, you might be able to answer this, what the top guys were using? Because I know, there were.
Yeah,
it's cool to see a mix of girls and guys.
Yeah, Basty's on. He rides for Patrick. He's a pro windsurfer, I think, is his background. Legend of a guy, but he's using a really tiny foil and a big wing. So a lot of guys think winging downwind is where you let the sail, float next to you and surf. These quick guys are using tiny foils and sailing downwind. It's probably different to people's expectations when they think of a wing downwinder, but it's really impressive. The speeds they do are crazy. I know I'm not sure of what Patrick Foil, size-wise he was on, but I know the kids on the Armstrong were on the 725. And I think Patrick was spewing because he was supposed to have a wing arrive, a prototype, which might have been a 525 or something, ridiculously small. So tiny little sort of kite wing nearly, I guess.
Yeah, it's to me, it's so foreign, and yet we're doing the same thing. I guess it's that power dinging, isn't it? We're literally powered up as much as we can with the sail and going as quick as we can downwind with the foil, rather than, I guess, what I like to do when I wing downwind is just sort of, hold it out to the side and, surf. And it's kind of like that hybrid that it's interesting, isn't it? The whole racing side of things and where it's going to go. And that's, I guess, one of the things I'd like to chat with you guys too. But let's stick with the race. So Marcus, why don't you kick us off and talk about the very start of the race, because this is something that is really intriguing to me. I guess they normally just do it with a gun going off and everyone's sort of on their board and they've got to get up onto the foil. I remember Jacko talking about a start where you could almost have a time, set your watch and be okay, at 12 o'clock, the gun's going to go, and you can be way upwind and be already foiling, or you can be right on the line and just paddle up and get going. But if you're across the line, you're disqualified. What was the start like?
I really like the idea of starting on a start line. Also, people have got to organise these races. You don't want to overcomplicate it. The other reason I like just a start line with a gun is it adds to the tactics. You know, what foil are you going to use? You need to be able to paddle up on the line when the gun goes. If you don't get up for 2 minutes, you know, that's a kilometre when you're doing this sport. And yeah, I mean, a few of the guys who hadn't raced much yet, they didn't get up on the start line. So yeah, I think it's I like the gun. I like what that brings to the race and what you got to use equipment wise. You can't just get the tiniest foil you can possibly use and time yourself. Yeah, that's just my opinion. Me and the other SUP foilers, we had a sort of a gentleman's agreement to we'll just wait for the wingers to go, because we were sitting out in the ocean because we obviously need the bumps to get going. So we all paddled out into the ocean and waited for the wingers to go, so we had clear water. And once if someone got up and didn't get, you know, nearly run over by a winger, it wouldn't spoil their start. So we waited for them to all go past, and then I just sort of said, "Are you guys ready to go?" And then we went. So yeah, it was pretty cool. You know, there was I think 8 of us or 9 of us, and we just all ran our own start. There was a guy on a foil drive. He was obviously the first to get up. Scott McCluskey, I think, was second. He was using a nice big go foil, and I was third to get up. And I'm not sure what happened behind me, but I think the guys in the lift 120, they had never done that run, and the bumps at the start are quite small and really clean, which kind of makes it harder to get up. You want those little ridges, you know, those little peaks, as you know, Jimmy, to get going. And I think it took them a little while to get going. And yeah, from there it was just a smooth run. Yeah, that was the start anyway. The race was, I don't know if you want me to go into the race yet, or if you want to
we'll get a crackers now about the wingers since you guys went off first. How was that crackers? Because like, was everyone sitting on their board with the wing? I haven't done a wing race.
Everyone was flying. Everyone was flying. The start line's a tricky one at the King of the Cut because it's close to the rock wall and it's hard to get upwind to the start line when you're on the wing. So everyone's kind of like cramped down in an area. And everyone's moving back and forwards, but behind the rock wall, there's less wind as well. So it was tricky. And it was a bit confusing when it started. Some were winging out already, and I think they were prepping to wing back for the gun, but the race starter wasn't quite sure what they were doing either. So there was just this little bit of a delay. For me personally, I'd lined myself up really nice. I'd gotten a spot where I knew my time, by the time I hit the start line, it would be going. And that little bit of delay just caused me to stall. I dropped out of the sky right as the gun went. And I couldn't believe it. I got back up pretty quick. So, you know, I kind of got my nerves going at the beginning of the race straight away because you're already down. You got to start again. But, you know, once you're going, everyone was happy and, you know, it is what it is. It's a bit of confusion with the wing foiling, with everyone flying around. And, you know, it's interesting what you're talking about, the speed dinging and the sport. A lot of the people that do the King of the Cut are coming from a SUP background and a downwinding background. So that speed dinging is quite foreign, you know, and everyone's kind of learning to do it. But at the same time, there's that muscle memory and brain memory of downwinding and catching runners and, you know, foiling that way. So it's interesting. The sport will probably split and you will have more of these speed dingers, and then, you know, will those wing foilers then end up on SUPs anyway and become downwinders on the SUPs, which is more organic, you know?
Yeah, and that's where I guess the deflate downwind thing is was sort of came from, is I guess crackers, you're probably one of the first people to do it in a race last year when your wing deflated accidentally.
Yeah.
But it as you said, it's really hard to just, like, if you're running a wing race and some people are free winging, other people are speed or power dinging, it's like it's a completely different discipline, and there's no way to I guess distinguish between the two from a race organizer's perspective, because you can do both throughout the entire run. So it's and it's impossible to I guess categorize, and you can't keep your eyes on everyone throughout the entire race. So it's sort of like the speed or the power dinging is always going to be where I see that wing racing going, because there's no way to prevent it. I liked how you said maybe the free wing is maybe the natural progression is to get into basically the sup downwinding. Maybe it'll be a deflate downwind scenario. I don't know. Who knows where the sport's going to go? And I think there's better options than actually deflating a wing, but like collapsing a wing, maybe using it to get going, and then you're only allowed to use it if you come down, or again, impossible to adjudicate. But interesting to say that the start was kind of like, I guess, what Jacko was talking about. Then Marcus, I guess you don't like so much, which I agree. It's impossible to. Even you see crackers, there was a bunch of confusion. People didn't really know what was going on. The starters didn't know what was going on. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves, I guess, the starts of races, because there's no doubt a seated start is easier to keep everyone in line, but people want to use smaller foils. They want to go faster. Is it going to... Then there's the chess game that, Marcus, you were talking about, which I think is super interesting. Yeah.
Well, it's like wherever the start line is, you got to get off it, right? So I kind of like the challenge, and as you say, the organisers, they have to set it up. Does it really matter where the start line is? Part of the challenge of the race is you got to get up and going, and you've got to get yourself off that start line.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Marcus?
I think for the wingers should have a timed start. And, a few of the guys asked at briefing, why is it not a timed start? The reason it wasn't is because it's a SUP race. The guy who runs the start doesn't run sailing races. I've sort of been chatted to a few of the wing foilers since and said, get on the committees. This race will probably stop anyway unless foilers and wing foilers get involved with it. And then we can run the start you want. It should be like, I'm from a sailing background, and you have like a 5-minute gun, 1-minute gun go, and it's on the dot. So you set your watch and you hit the line as close to it as you can, or as close as you dare to, I guess, without being over. And it's not a problem. That's super easy. But he had a 1-minute gun and then a go gun, but it wasn't exactly 1 minute. And he told the guys, it won't be exactly 1 minute. I'm going to do it when you guys are in a line, which, that's not a sailing start. They want to hit it running. And that's cool. It's a part of learning. It's a SUP race that's evolving. So it's going to be something that will iron out as it goes. But it'll also take, foilers to get involved with it. If they don't, then, how can we make it right unless they're involved in it? So, I think we'll see a bunch of them get involved, and the start will be different for them. They'll have a time start, and maybe it can be an exact time start for every class. But I think, I think a lot of the guys who want to, going back to that whole sailing versus surf racing, I think a lot of the guys that like to surf downwind are very keen on doing the SUP downwind foil thing. I'd nearly like to, we had a guy with a foil drive do the race, and none of us really cared. I think it'd nearly be cool to encourage people to do that, and maybe they just have an E next to their name in brackets, and that's a separate class nearly. But don't discourage people from getting downwind however they want to. And then my boss was just shot up at the door. That's all good. I've got time. Let the sport, bloom and explode, rather than say, no, you can't do it because you got an engine. Just, there's e-foil mountain bike races and stuff.
I totally agree. And I think moving forward, that e-foil division, it'll go to a point where the e-foil is the biggest, and then a lot of those e-foilers will transition into the SUP foil, or, you could even have this is where it gets a little tricky, but like the free wing downwind, it's got to be like, obviously you've got to know within yourself that you're going to be free wing the whole way down the course, but you could have like a speed ding. There's enough wingers, you could do it. You have a speed ding division and then a free wing division, and obviously there is a pretty big chance that you can cheat, but it's got to be kind of gentleman's rules, like if I'm behind crackers and I'm like, I might just try to squeak a little bit and speed digging in to catch up, people are going to know, and I think deep down people put their hands up and like, I cheated a little bit there or whatever it is. But that's the beauty of foiling. It's all for fun. There's no.
Yeah, I think if you want to surf thing, you got to go there for fun. You're not going to win. And I don't know, maybe there'll become some sort of rule where you have to use a certain size foil, and it will be actually more efficient to surf downwind because you won't have the speed. I don't know what's going to happen with the wingy thing. It's a little more complex, but I'm sure it's all going to figure itself out.
Yeah, well, I think, as you said, Marcus, I think get wingers and foilers on the committees of these races, and something's going to turn up, and without people putting their hands up in the community, it's not going to become a thing. But I know there are people that are driven enough to do it, and the King of the Cup is such an awesome race that it kind of was one of the it was one of the few races that you can rely on wind and decent conditions. So it's fingers crossed it happens. Yeah, 10 years exactly.
10 years with wind every race. So yeah, it's been a pretty amazing thing to watch unfold. All my workers are showing up.
Yeah.
all the workers, not my workers. But yeah, it'll be a shame to see it die off because the SUP class essentially is now the smallest one, and that's how it started. So yeah, I'm hoping that a bunch of people are keen to get involved. And yeah, I guess we'll see what happens with it. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting how it all unfolds with foiling. It's obviously all going to change. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it either way.
Yeah, for sure. Because I know you've got to go in the next 10 minutes or so, Marcus, let's stick with you and let's talk about the race, I guess, how it unfolded. You're probably the worst person to talk to because you're at the front most of the way. But you can probably give us a bit of a brief on how the other SUP guys were going and maybe talk about the equipment that you were using, if you can, board, foil, and what other people were using around you.
Yeah, I was using a 6x24 board, 78 litres. Pretty much the board I've just thought, that works, and using it. All these guys here now who are pushing the limits have only been doing it for less than a year, using 22 wide boards they made themselves. So I'm playing catch up in the board thing now. So yeah, the young guys are like, you got to get skinnier. So that's happening. Got one coming. Super high aspect foils seem to be going the best they're just more efficient, more glide. It's not the best turning foil, a high aspect foil, but for for SUP foil downwind, nothing is really comparing to that. When the gun went, as I said, the foil drive guy left first. Then Scott McCluskey on the big go foil, then myself. I think within about a kilometre or two, I was beside Scott and going a fair bit quicker, but I was on a much smaller foil. From what I hear, the guys behind took a little bit longer to get going. It is a funny place to get going, and very different to where we foil every day in Metro Perth. So, they all eventually got going. For me, it was just a clean run and slowly coming through the field of the wing surfers, I guess we're going to call them. Free wingers, which was cool because, you know heaps of them, so you go past and give them a hoot and stuff. It was weird for me, the conditions themselves, or the race track itself, coming back a year later on way better gear. And where usually, where you're trying to hang with the waves and stuff, now the foils are so much faster that you're overtaking them, and the waves were so clean and had such big backs on them, and it wasn't confused enough to find little holes to keep shooting through.
Yeah, too clean.
It was actually one of the slowest runs I've done for a while. It took me an hour and 4 minutes, and for this season on the gear I'm using, it was one of the slowest runs I've done. The second half got a bit more confused and a bit more technical and a bit more faster because there was those doorways and bridges and stuff to shoot and keep overtaking. But it was cool how different it was because the gear is so much better.
It's amazing how much the gear's come in the last 12 months. Even like almost 6 to 8 months, really. I'm pretty sure, Marcus, you were using the Axis ART 999, might have been a prototype, but that's pretty much what it was.
Yeah.
What length mast were you using?
75.
75, yeah. So shorter mast than probably what you were using last year too. And
just a tiny little, pretty much the smallest tail wing I can get.
Yeah, so going for speed. Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy. The wing I was using was quite small surface area, but the high aspect part of it, they seem to paddle up better, glide better, do everything better except turn.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not like ripping turns downwind when you're racing anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was amazing, and yeah, the gear. It's funny, you know, it looks totally different to a year ago. Let alone how much better it is in the ocean and the efficiency. I think if we looked at one of these foils a few years ago, we would have just probably laughed at it and thought it was impossible. But,
yeah.
Yeah, the paddles that they're foiling up now are the same ones that we use in the surf. You know, a lot of the guys here are using the Lift 120, which is one of my favourite foils to use just in the waves. And yeah, they're just paddling it up like it's nothing.
Yeah, it is crazy.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth mentioning Julian Bradley. You told me the story just on the phone, I guess, after the race. Do you want to share that with the crew? But what was his story? I tried to get him on, but it was a little bit hard to organise everyone at the same time.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So the weirdest bit about this story is, first of all, he does not use his paddle except to paddle up. But he did. Downwind foilers will know that if you paddle at the wrong time, you'll run over it with your foil and you'll snap the blade. And he just happened to make that strange mistake in the race, and he snapped his blade, and he laid on his board for a bit and thought, I'll just try paddle up prone. No paddle hands.
Just
on a
hands.
lift. Yeah, on this Lift 120 that I'm talking about is so hard to paddle up. And he paddled up prone. It's ridiculous. I jump on his board mid-run. Sometimes we swap out here, and I'm like, I can't even paddle this up with a paddle.
Yeah.
And he paddled the thing up prone. The only really crap thing about this story is that he didn't get to the finish because he went into race mode. This is what he told me. He's like, I could see Donnie up ahead, and these are all the guys we foil with every day. So there's, you know, that, I've got to catch up to Donnie.
Rivalries.
So we went into race mode, and he came down because, it would have been one of those like mythical tales that this guy paddled up prone on a downwind SUP run and went to the finish, but unfortunately he didn't. But crazy. And it was a shame that he broke his paddle. I mean, the fact that he broke it was bizarre. But you know, race day, sometimes weird things happen. But the weirdest bit is that he paddled up on a 120 in the middle of the ocean. It's so crazy. It wasn't that windy. It blows me away that he did it.
So I got a few questions on it. First thing, what did he do with his paddle? Did he just leave it? Did he give it to the support boat, or
he had a life jacket on, and he just shoved it down the back like a ninja.
No way.
Yeah,
that's epic. And then he just sort of got the right bump and paddled as hard as he could and popped up. Right.
Yeah. The best thing about Julian too is he wears this like sperm suit that is a rashie that goes up over his head, real good sun protection, but it is like a white ninja suit.
Yeah.
And now he's got he has a ninja sword there.
Yeah.
And he actually tried the Kalama sling. As soon after that day, he started trying the Kalama sling, and foiling with him out in the ocean, he just looked like this ninja out there. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's unreal. Another question I have, I guess that's awesome. I might have to try to call Julian separate and add it to the end of this, because that's worth getting the first-hand recount of it.
Good to get his story,
Yeah. On the time he did, 1:04, that was on your watch? Because obviously you let the wingers go first.
Because we let the wingers go. We waited for clear ocean, so that was off my watch. Not the official time.
So what sort of speeds on it? I know you get into this and I do too, but what sort of what was your average speed? What was your average kilometer speed? What was your fastest kilometer speed? And people probably want to know what your fastest top speed was too, if you know.
Not sure what my top speed is. I don't really pay that much attention, but my average speed was only about 23. The slowest run I've done on that equipment is actually more like high 23. So it was actually pretty slow, 23 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
My fastest kilometer was about, is it 220 or 320? 220.
Maybe 220. Yeah, 220.
220. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was about pretty much 220 was my fastest, but there wasn't many like that. I had one as I get closer to the end, it got faster and faster. So the Ks were kind of more like 240 for the first half of the run, where it was too clean to go fast. Like you kind of got stuck on one bump, surfing back and forth, waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
But generally that foil is doing much faster than that. But it was so much fun because you were forced to surf and there was no weed, so we weren't working hard. It was fun. It was really cool.
Yeah, I might just. Do you want to go into a little bit more detail and explaining what? Like, I know you've only got a couple of minutes, but like when the bumps are super clean like this, then it's sort of running like this, versus when the bumps are at an angle like that, it sort of allows a crossover point, so to speak. So
I guess if you just picture like really clean swells all running down the coast, unless you can really bomb and work hard and get up and over one, it's actually quite hard, especially when it's big. They got big backs on them, so it's a big uphill. But when it's messier and you've got the maybe ocean swell and wind swell sort of all mixed up a little bit, those swells that run sort of from the wave that you're on to the back of the one in front, you nearly use them like a bridge, I thought I'd call it.
Yep. And
they make bridges through, and they also create little holes as well in the wave in front of you. So you pick your bridges or your holes, and when you get really wound up, you can have the thing, just going super fast and just surfing efficiently, finding all those bits of energy, picking holes and bridges, and just going. Sometimes, when it's good, you're looking 4 or 5 bumps down the line, no one, picking your holes. I get excited by it.
Yeah. Well, the way I think about it is if we've got our really clean bumps like this, it means like a bay run, I guess. You're forced to stay within that sort of zone. That's peak, trough. Trough is where my head is and peak is where my arms are. As soon as you've got one bit of crossover, you've got a peak or you've got a trough intersecting the peak, which is the hole or the bridge you're talking about. And it basically allows a low point for you to not even have to go up and over. You're surfing that trough over the larger peak that is in front of you. So you can be powered up through the whole bit. You don't have that dead section because you use that bridge. Yeah. Exactly. It's the best feeling. Feels like you're in a skate bowl or something. Seriously. You get you can almost sort of go back and forth and staying. You're always downhill when you're going over and uphill is the way I sort of think about it. That's a really... there'll be a tiny little bit of energy moving up and across a bigger bump almost. And you are powered up. The foiler knows the feeling of being powered up, where you get on the front foot and the thing's just like projecting forward. Yeah. And that feeling of carving into a bowl and then up and over the back of one and then back down the face, fully powered up that whole time, versus sometimes if you get it wrong, you've got to pump through the dead section up and over. Yeah. And you lose your speed. But when you find that power source the whole time, that's very fun. Yeah, and if this is a more advanced thing we're talking about, like ideally the conditions on the King of the Cut Runner are kind of perfect, because for most of us learning the downwind foil, you want these like sort of train track easy runs to just sort of run along. It's easier to look at. As more advanced foilers, those messy conditions are super fun, but they're intimidating for those that have never seen it before. I know, Marcus, we did a paddle on the hollow board that you made for Molokai and around Muckapu, and it was probably the ugliest water you could ever think of. And on a SUP, it was tough. On a foil now, with more knowledge, like I know myself, I'm just thinking of all these angles you could take. You could have almost gone upwind to these bumps. But at full skate park for a foil, these messy conditions are kind of the best in a weird kind of way. Totally. Yeah. So it's I'll keep talking. I'm going to walk up to my shop. We'll chat to Crackers. If you got to go, Marcus, all good. Thanks for your time. The Crackers, do you want to talk to us about, I guess?
Oh, no worries, guys.
Yeah. Cheers, mate. We'll catch you. Crackers, we'll go to you now. Let's talk about the free winging, or I guess what were you doing mainly? Were you doing a bit of power dinging, a bit of free
Oh, hang
winging.
up.
I guess when you're just talking to Marcus about the flat spots and that, what I was trying to do was any time I lost the power or the energy of the runner, I would power up on the wing and push through those flat spots and get onto the next runner.
Yeah.
And so it was a bit of a game using the power of the foil and the power of the wing to get my momentum forward. The king of the cut too, we have to go around a cardinal marker at Dottie's Beach, which brings you right back into the coast, and then means you have to surf left, and I'm goofy foot. So powering up on your backhand you just can't get it as tight as you can if you're on the other hand. So I found I was much better if I could maximize surfing as well and using the runners to surf left rather than trying to wing and be in that awkward position all the time.
Toe side, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I was using it as a game to kind of get as far up as I could. And when I switched to go the other direction, I was heading back into the coast. That's when I always found my speed. So Crystal was right in front of me most of the time, which was more of a head game for me, which is probably what cost me my race because I was, thinking about her and catching her. And every time I stacked it, I managed to catch her back just because I was able to surf the downwind runners better and keep a straight line where she was zigzagging back and forth. So it's a shame I didn't actually log my trip, and I wish I had to see my speeds and also to see hers because I fell off a few times and I had to catch back up. I know I was going faster than her most of the time if I'd stayed on the board.
The full hair and the tortoise, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it was. And I think the only time I overtook it was around that cardinal marker because I switched my feet over and kind of did, which was hard when I got on the runners. I had to switch back to be toe side, but I managed to just get a little bit of speed on her and come around the marker faster and tighter than she did and got in front. But she ended up back in front by the end anyway.
Yeah, interesting because I guess when you first said goofy foot and you have to go left, it's like, oh, that's perfect because, as a natural footer for king of the cut on the stand-up, it's always been a bit of a tricky one because here in Sydney, my favourite run is a southerly and that's cutting right most of the time. So on a SUP, that's my good side. On my toe side on a SUP, the toe side on a wing is different because you're twisted. So that sort of threw me when you said that, but it makes total sense. I guess it's going to be harder for you to power ding and free wing on your toe side because of that.
Yeah, it's just that powering up and down. Like if you're on your free side and you're able to power up, your hands right there, but on the other side you're kind of twisted and you got to reach across. So I ended up actually just slipping my top hand under the boom or on top of the boom and pushing it down that way, and that was much quicker to move my hand in and out between the powering up and down and stuff. But it is, I have come from a SUP background and not a wing background, so that's the fun of racing, is really learning about. Sorry, I'm in a caravan park. I don't know if that truck's really noisy behind me.
It's all good.
But just trying to figure out how to use that wing like that for speed, and it was just a really good learning experience racing. And last year I was out there on my own as the only female competitor, and for me it just really lit me on fire having someone to race and right there with you, and regardless of the outcome, it was really cool to have that experience and kind of be neck and neck with someone. Yeah, no,
it sounded like it. And I know in the lead up to the race you were chatting to me like, oh, what foil should I use, what wing should I use? And I'm stoked to use the RS1000 because for winging that's an epic foil, pretty forgiving and goes quick when you light it up. And I'd love the Go For guys to make it a little bit more high aspect, like Marcus was saying, just gives you that little bit more range, a little bit more glide, a bit more forgiving when we're downwinding. For in the waves, the RS1000 is pretty sick.
And like you say, that pumping through with the high aspect is just faster and cleaner. And that's probably because the runners were a little bit slower, and like you guys were saying, they were really clean. There weren't those other sections to gain speed off. So there was lots of learning for me as well out there, because I don't, like Marcus, he gets to be in this stuff all the time. It's pretty new conditions to me. So it's, racing and learning all in the same one.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning. So Crackers, you're from the far north of WA pretty much, and do you explain the conditions that you're normally in, and then I guess how it's different down south? Because I love talking about different conditions and that sort of thing. I think a lot of people
Yeah,
get
well,
sick from it.
I guess the biggest thing for us is we've got an archipelago of islands. So in most cases, the fetch has been broken up by something. So you just don't get those clean runners, and you don't get the ocean swell mixed in with it. So in some sense, it's not bad for learning, like paddling up and that. You've got nice, short, choppy runners, lots of wind chop to pop up. But for practicing, like going down real runners with that speed and acceleration and linking, it's definitely a little bit more challenging. But saying that, it also forces you to work hard in the training, in the lead up, so that when you get down there, you're as ready as you can be. And over the years, whether it was on the paddle or on the foil now, that process of getting to the king of the cut is the bit that excites me, because I know how challenging it is to get down there and be in all new conditions and just have to learn while you're out there.
For sure. And I know you had a bit more time this time than last year. You had maybe a week to play around in the bumps beforehand, whereas the year before it was just a couple of days. And like, that's one of the things, like for those SUP foil or just downwind foil crew that are listening, everywhere you go, the conditions are different. And like, even chatting to Greg at the race they did in France and looking at the speeds they did, like Clermont, I've done a run with Clermont a couple of years ago, or 2019, I think it was, King of the Cut before COVID hit. And you know, he's a freak downwind, basically. He's a very good downwind foiler, but the speeds he was doing in France were, I think, much slower than even what they were doing, what you guys are doing at King of the Cut. And that makes sense because they're doing more of a bay run. Like, I think he was averaging sort of 20 kilometers per hour, but he was using a tiny, you know, a 980 Kajira. Marcus was using the 999 Axis and was averaging 23 kilometers per hour. And he said that's the slowest he's sort of gone on that foil because of the conditions. So it's really interesting. Like, people try to sort of put speeds and conditions into a sort of box, but there's so many variables. You know, there's so many, you know, there's those really clean runs, there's the messy runs that are faster. There's currents, as crackers, you know, we've spoken about a lot about currents before, and so many variables that you can't really just put one foil in a box and say, yeah, it goes 20 k's an hour, this one goes 23, this one goes 25, whatever it is. It's more complex than that. And
with racing too, that's one part that's complex, is choosing the right gear before you go out. And
100%. Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of people at the King of the Cut. We all guesstimated, I think the wind would be more than it was. I went quite wide. Crystal stayed on the inside. And I was like, I'm getting out in those bigger runners. And I got out there and it actually felt like it had dropped off out there. And I ended up coming back on the inside. So we must have been picking up a bit of land gust or something on the inside as well.
Yeah, and also currents, or like, there's so many variables. You know, you can be stuck in an eddy out there. You can, the wind could be funneling off the land a bit better, or it could be, you know, as we know, I don't pretend to like, I've seen so many different conditions, but when people ask me, oh, what's the current doing today? It's like, oh, you'll have to get out there and have a crack, because it'll change. But it's like, if I went an hour ago and you go on, you know, an hour later, it changes. And even like when I chat to Zane, we're doing our local runs here, and like, I was calling, like, oh, how was the run? He's like, oh, it was okay. I'm like, oh, it was epic when I went. And it's like, half an hour to an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours makes huge difference. Yeah. So let's get back to the race, I guess. Was there any point that you thought, I guess, where were you in relation to the guys? Like, were you guys?
So Scotty and I were neck and neck the whole way. I was actually probably racing him more than anyone else. So,
okay. So Scott McCluskey was on the NL 220, and he was the guy that came second in the race. As Marcus said, he was the second up after the guy on the foil drive. And yeah, okay, cool. I didn't know that. So yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, so he was right next to me. So that was fun, because we kind of been doing runs all week and, you know, hanging out and that. So yeah, it was good. He'd go off, fall off, and then I'd fall off, and then up we'd go, and one was in front and one was behind, but there was no pressure because we weren't in the same division, you know, it's fun. Yeah. And in terms of the rest of the guys, obviously Bastian and Paddy and the other young fella, they were way up in front. And the other girls were a fair way behind Crystal and I. So we were fairly close to the front section of the pack, front mid. But we had a lot of the OCs and SUPs there as well, because they'd left earlier. So that was interesting too, like just even spatial awareness of all these craft on the water. And I think there was one point I wasn't too far off Crystal, and I'd come down and it was nearly at the end of the race, and an OC came through and I was about to take off and I had to give way. I couldn't pump up because I was going to be right in his line, and I couldn't go the other way because it was my back foot. So, you know, that cost me a little bit, but you're out there on the water and you're all mates. So you got to be like, oh, well, you take it. It's all right. You get the runner. I'll go the next one.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Like, I guess on those multi-sport downwind runs, like, I think it's right. I think the slower craft should get right of way, as frustrating as that would be on the wing or on your downwind foil, because it's hard for us to get going, and for the guys on the, you know, the paddle non-foiling craft, they're just plodding along the entire way. But yeah, I think that's probably the right thing, is those with more power or speed give way to those with less, because a lot of the time you're coming behind them, and obviously if you can't run into someone, and I think you did the right thing there, because it's amazing how much traffic there can be on those sorts of runs or races, and it's like, oh, come on, there's a whole ocean out there, but you're all finishing at the same spot. So it all converges.
That can also affect you technically, and I think this is where, like, as the racing evolves, it's like you can have a plan on when you're going to attack and where you're going to go, but if there's a craft in the way, and like for me, so if I was heading right, I was much faster and I wanted that tack, but someone might be in the way and you've got to tack back the other way, and then you lose, you know, and you're going so fast on a foil, it doesn't take much to create distance between you. Just a couple of maneuvers and someone can be gone. So, you know, I just find that side of it really interesting as well, and, you know, how to time yourself perfectly to gain the most speed without kind of crashing into anyone or affecting anyone else in your race as well.
Yeah. Okay. So how much tacking were you doing down the run? Like, because to me, I guess, when I'm free winging, I'm thinking like sort of hold the one line as square downwind as I can be, so that I, you know, obviously you go less distance, but obviously the power dingers especially, they're going to be tacking more. I'd assume free winging, you're probably just going to be changing hands, or I guess talk us through it.
Yeah. So if I saw a good bump coming, I was heading left a lot more. So I wasn't tacking as much as Crystal. She was tacking heaps more. But like I say, I had to tack right to be able to gain that extra little bit of speed if I wanted to catch her. So I would generally go left, surf as much of a runner as I could. And when I knew I could turn and kind of get some speed on it on the right, I'd take it off and then keep surfing it to the right. If I could go left again, I would. But if I couldn't, then I'd power back up on the right and then do a bit of a run and then go back left. But I did spend most of my time left, especially after we went around that cardinal marker, because you really got to go across. So yeah, I was going left most of the way and doing only a few tacks just to get a bit of extra speed. Whereas Crystal was tacking the whole way. She was zigzagging.
Yeah.
And I think that's because she was power dinging as well.
Yeah, and that, like you said, it's so. I remember in the lead up, I'm like, Crackers, you got to power ding if you want to be competitive. But you know, we've worked so hard on a. Crackers is very close to SUP downwinding. You probably could have done it this year, I reckon.
Yeah.
But I'm stoked you did. I'm stoked you had the race on the ding, because
I should have taken a foil drive out.
Well, seriously, the foil drive is kind of what, you know, you're using the ding just to get going pretty well, and then sort of free wing, and that's, you know, it's so. I like that comment you said before, where you got like the sort of, and Marcus like saying like e-foil, but if you could use the, you know, you could almost have like a power dinging division, a free wing division, an e-foil division, and then the SUP foil division. And it dilutes it a lot. But I think at the moment, there's enough people that will probably enter all those sort of different disciplines, because I know there's heaps of people winging, there's heaps of people free winging, and there's a lot of people that want to be downwinding. And with the e-foil, foil drivey kind of thing, and even just like a fully fledged like e-foil. I know I got mates who do a downwinder with me, and they'll just blast along in their e-foil, and they're trying to, you know, let go of the motor for as long as they can and then glide downwind, but, you know, they're clicking the motor on again and they're coming down and they're catching up as they go. I still don't think they're as quick. I think I still beat them downwind. So it's, you know, it doesn't really take too much away from anything, and it's, I guess the only problem with the king of the cut is probably coming in at the finish line is pretty sketchy with a fully fledged e-foil, but I guess wings can do it, so there's no reason others can't.
I had a beautiful run into the beach, all the way in, stepped sand pretty much.
Love it.
Yeah, it was so good,
Yeah.
especially on the wing.
Yeah.
Because there's big shallow banks, you know. I think at one point I could see the sand under my foil. I'm like, nah, don't fall off this now. Just like stay as high as you can. You can feel the foil like hitting the surface of the water.
Yeah, it's sketchy. A foil finish is always a bit sketchy. I wonder if, I know in France they were doing a deep water finish, so you didn't have to sort of deal with the finish line. It sounds like it was not the case. They
do have a deep water finish at the cut as well.
They do.
On the outside, it's just, you know, still want to go in through the surf break.
Yeah, you got to get in as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think so. And look, the King of the Cut's an interesting one because it is a SUP race or a waterman race, like you say. And the wing foiling is in Western Australia, I really see it at the moment, is a stepping stone for the SUP downwinders. And because the sport's so new, we're using it, like you say, to power up, get on the runners, and then depower. But eventually, I think a lot of people will move to the paddle in time that are out of those original kind of foilers in WA. And with the race, the King of the Cut, I like the idea that maybe the wing has a different day or a different time slot. Like, so you do have a speed ding event, but then also keep that traditional downwinding event with the OCs and the SUPs. And I think the SUPs will grow again once WA opens up because West Australians are wind frothers and we've all moved to the foil. You know, you look at the lineup and all of the guys, and there's some really skillful ocean paddlers, surfers, windsurfers in Western Australia. So they were going to migrate to the foil pretty quick anyway, which has kind of left the SUP in the dead. I think we had more women on wing foils this year than we did on paddleboards.
Yeah, wow. And that's, worth mentioning. Michael Booth won the downwind event. I can't believe he didn't foil. I would love to see how he went because I spoke to him after because I was kind of like a training paddle. He's in a different league to most of the other paddlers over there and even around the world even. But last time I raced King of the Cut, I was on a SUP too, and Boothie and I had a good race. But I think if I go over again, it's more competition on the SUP foil now. Kind of regardless of who's coming, you know, there's the local crew that are obviously pushing the limits. There's Marcus, obviously, and then there's, you know, a lot of, I know there's guys that would come to the race if everything was open. That I just feel it'd be more of a race on foil than it would be on the unlimited SUP. Kind of like in Molokai 2019, Boothie and I had a really good race, but the SUP foil division, it was more competitive. Like to put it plain and simple, like Kai Lenny, Jeffrey Spencer, Clement Colmer, Titwan Galea, like they were all guys that were literally in to win it. Whereas when Boothie and I raced, there were literally 4 people that could have won it. There was myself, Michael Booth, Kenny Kaneko, and Josh Riccio on the 14. And like I've worked a long way to get to that point. It was a shame that some people couldn't enter the race. But next year, a lot of people have asked me if Molokai's on, what division are you going to do? And it's kind of like, look, I'd love to do both, but if push came to shove, I'd probably do the foil, which is I didn't think I'd say that a couple of years ago, but it's cool to see. Like as you said, Crackers, like if you were to do the SUP, you would have been the only SUP foil. You would have been the only chick to do it, right? Is that yeah? Yeah,
and because I kind of did that last year on the wing foil, I didn't have a division, which was not a big deal. I want to race with someone. I'm out in the water on my own all the time. So just to be out with the girls and to have that camaraderie before and after it was really cool to be part of something. And for me, that was the highlight of the race for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, the whole SUP thing, it's hard too because it's line honours or the winning for the SUPs with the King of the Cut. And that seems a bit redundant now too if you've only got 5 SUPs paddling, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, the race is in a difficult position, and you know the volunteers and all that are a bit burnt out. And I think as athletes, we all kind of need to get in behind the King of the Cut.
Yeah, and give back a little.
Back it and help it grow and help it find where it needs to go as we all change our sports as well.
No, totally agree.
And, you know, it'll happen with surfing too, especially in Western Australia with the SUP surfing. It'll be interesting to see where that goes as the foils progress, because less are surfing now. on the SUPs over here anyway.
Yeah, it's the same in Sydney. There was a training crew of 15 to 20 that had trained out of Collaroy Brownwater area, and it's kind of, I think it's sprung back a little bit after COVID, but it's like kind of there were 3 to 4 people on this on like training on the race SUPs, and there were another 5 to 10 out in the local spot foiling. They'd still rock up for morning training, but they're just on different craft, and they just paddle out and ride waves, and they'd just be foiling, having a blast. And the guys in the SUPs would be like, maybe we should try that. And, when your mates start doing it and they see them having fun, it's just going to have a carry-on effect. So yeah, I really do hope, for the sake of King of the Cut, that it's still on when everything opens up, because I'd be
I think part of it with SUP is having more events that can bridge people between the elite events and just casual paddling, because the sport's still growing unbelievably fast in Australia with the flat water stuff. It's just the event side, how people get to competition and how they get to that elite level. There's nothing in between, and it's fine for the guys like you that are super fit and can paddle 20 Ks easy, but for the beginners wanting to get into racing, it's just a bit too much, and we need some of these 5 to 10K races that can allow these people to build confidence and then join the bigger events. And then we'll see the sport grow more, I think, in Australia, whereas at the moment we're losing it.
Yeah, stagnant.
Especially with COVID,
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess before, I would love to talk about, pathways a bit with you crackers, because I know we've had a few discussions of that before, but do you want to add anything else from the King of the Cut? Any stories?
I think Ben Deschamps, he had a good story where his tail plate come off and he ended up duct taping it. No. So he got the rescue boat over. They couldn't find screws or anything. I don't know whether he lost a screw or something went wrong, and he duct taped it, and he still he got back out there on the paddle and did a couple of Ks, but he said he was just bucking and he couldn't control it. And he showed me at the end, it was just gnarly to see it ducked on. So I thought that was pretty cool, but he was devo that he couldn't finish the race as well. And that's where you wish there could be spare gear on a boat, because once you're out and that's it. It's a bit of a shame, and I had my gear malfunction last year, but at least I was able to still keep going, because
the original deflate.
It was a lot bigger last year. It was Newcomb, so it was nearly 30 knots, so you didn't need the wing really.
Okay, cool.
That was probably the best story.
Yeah, that's definitely worth mentioning. So yeah, I've had something similar in a race overseas on an inflatable stand-up, and I rocked up and I had a fin. Well, I forgot the fin for the inflatable SUP, so I had a race fin, and I just sort of put that in, and I just duct taped it on. And I know how, obviously on a SUP there's already a bit of drag, but on a foil I'd imagine there'd be a lot of drag with a bit of duct tape, and the angles would be all over the place. And good on him.
Yeah, he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy at all. But lucky he had a good week the week before as well. And that's part of the King of the Cuts. You come down here and you get to downwind every day and really enjoy that run, and it's just such a perfect run. You just can't get any better. It's so good. Yeah,
actually, I made one. Tracy was over for the week, and she was stoked to be able to get over there. But she said it was a completely different vibe to previous years that she's gone, because normally there's a crew of 15 to 20, even Sydney crew that'll fly over, maybe even more, and they'll be the same from Queensland, like the Gold Coast, the same from South Australia, and even Victoria too. And there's this sort of little festival kind of vibe. It's like a festival of downwind, and the race is a bonus. Everyone else is just there. There's not much tapering going on. I always say to crew that are racing for the events, just take it easy. You want to peak for race day, but nah, the conditions are epic. I'm out there, which I totally get.
Yeah, it's can you make it through the whole week without getting too sore or having a rest day? And at the end, my legs blew up. I had to go back up north and sit on a plane, and I think all the lactic acid of just frothing for a week, because I was doing double or triple runs some days. The body gave in afterwards, and it's just nah, it's enough. You're done.
Oh, for sure. I get that. Actually, on that, so the training runs you were doing, were you doing the first half of the cut or the full run?
We were doing the first half, only for logistics. I really wanted to do the second half, but nobody was keen to go with me. And, that's the tricky part of the race. Once you get into that second half, it's got a bit of backwash. The runners are bigger. It's always more challenging. So I didn't get a chance to do that, but I did a couple of runs from south of the King of the Cut to make it a bit longer. and that was pretty epic as well because you were out wider from the beginning.
Yeah.
So you're right out in that good stuff straight away. But yeah, we just had heaps of fun. Probably the best day was the Thursday where we had really strong winds, but we had like a 2 meter swell as well.
Oh,
so
wow.
what you're saying, Marcus, about it being just a skate bowl, it's just insane. I would have done that 5 times if I'd had the time. It was so good. So everyone was really happy and peaking right before the race because we'd all had a good run, and we still had a few crew. You know, I think there was like 8 that flew over from the East Coast, and myself coming from up north, and we had a couple of Bunbury guys and that. The Perth crew tend to stay in the metro. So we still had some people out in the water, which was fun, and it still had the vibe. So yeah, it was good. It was
awesome. Yeah, I guess on the half cut versus the full cut, when I was there last, we were just doing mainly half cuts, but I made the effort to do, I think I did 2 full runs, or at least just the second half, like starting at Hall's Head and finishing down at the Secret Harbour. And like you said, it's so different. I mean, like Marcus said, like the first run is so, train track, just perfect. Whereas the second half is where I believe the race really begins, because the first half, when the conditions are super perfect like that, and like same as in bay runs or in lake downwinders, you kind of get to the bumps, and unless you make a mistake, you're stuck like behind one person the entire time. Like there's no, as long as you don't stuff up, you're not going to fall off that bump, and it's really hard to up and over a bump. So it sort of gets tricky in that respect. So in terms of training, I always say for races like King of the Cut, you're better off working the second half of the run than you are the first half, because it's so, all the crossover, all those bridges and holes and, little gaps to sort of run through. That's where the race truly begins, I believe. And it sounds like that was the case with you as well with Chasing Crystal. But logistics wise, I totally get it. Like if everyone's staying at Hall's Head, it's like, we just drive up and come back. It's super easy. But for me, like if you're doing 2 or 3 runs, you could just do one long one, and there's only one car drive. And so I always.
And I think now if I could go back in time, I would have more confidence in myself just to get out on my own and do that second run by myself. I'd be totally fine. And when you're even on the half cut, you're still pretty much out there by your own anyway. So I think that's just a little bit of confidence thing with me. Just getting out there and having a go. But I that's what I love about the King of the Cut, is that the first half of the race is everyone kind of like getting rid of the nerves, setting themselves up, finding where they want to be. And then the second half, it starts, and there's always a story, it's so wild, and you never really know. And the more you've done that run a lot, the more you do the run, it's never the same. It's never even close to the same. And it's such a different experience. And I think it would have been pretty hard on the paddleboards this year, that second run. It was got mushy, but it was quite flat as well. I didn't feel like the runners were as clean as the first half. So I think on a SUP, it would have been quite challenging. And they had some pretty late times. Some of the end SUPs coming in, so I think they were getting knocked around a little bit on the bumps.
No
doubt. I think it's pretty nice being on a foil and just straight over it,
the foil, it's funny, isn't it? Like the foil just makes like the missing conditions, when you get used to it, are the best. Whereas on a SUP, those clean like train track sort of runs are pretty nice. On a SUP, you sort of set and stick, and you're just gliding on one run for ages. Whereas on the foil, you actually have to slow down on those ones, which is riding the same bumps kind of thing. I want to talk to you about pathways now, Crackers, because I know we've spoken about that a lot, just you and I, but I guess I opened up a little bit more, and I spoke to Boothie about like where all the racing for SUP and foiling is going to. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the sport evolves, and I'm always keen to sort of chat and maybe influence it a little bit if we can.
Yeah, I reckon I got about 10 minutes.
Perfect. Let's call it 5 even, and then we won't run over. So I know you work a lot with kids, like getting kids into SUP and into foiling too yet, or not?
Yeah,
not quite?
So they've pretty much, the boys are the only ones that haven't had to go on the foil yet, just because they've been doing other stuff, which I'll get them back on that when I get home. But I've also been teaching them to wingding just in the last week, which like school of crackers, throw them out of the boat with the foil and a wing, and I'm like, good luck, girls. It was pretty fun. So yeah, they're getting into it, and you can see that foil brain starting to work with them. So yeah, I've kind of been developing a program, and you've been working with me on this, and we had some stages, and I think it was level 4 was like teaching them to downwind SUP, and this group of kids have been paddling with me for a while, and I always kind of envisioned getting them to the King of the Cut to race, just for them, for the experience. And now I'm looking at the sport, and I'm like, let's not even bother. We've got, at the moment, I've only got flat water race boards up there to train on. So it would also mean me having to invest in a huge amount of equipment to get these kids downwinding. And they're starting to play around on the foils, and the foils are more accessible for us because they can play around behind the boat and stuff like that. We come from a boating community. So I think that's where a lot of these kids will go, and then they'll just continue to flat water paddle for fitness and endurance and that type of stuff. But yeah, for the kids, there is no pathways at the moment in Australia. And I know now, like, we've all been frothing our age group and the older ones and loving the foil, and SUPs as well. But there is the next generation are coming up, and they're getting good, and they want to do this stuff. And if you look at the King of the Cut in the wing foil, you have young Paddy, and I don't know his mate's name, sorry, that 16, 17 and 14 years old, second and third place in the race, which is incredible, and these kids to have the courage to take on the adults and to do it so well, they annihilated everyone. I just think that that's where we really need to focus on these kids and give them opportunities to compete where, these guys are fine. They're not intimidated, but as more come up through the ranks, what do we have for them,
Absolutely. And like, I guess we're competing with, your general team sports like soccer, like your rugby, like your Aussie rules, netball, all that sort of stuff. And there's lots of, I guess, blockages, I guess, for those that are in surfing even, but foiling and SUP especially, because there's just no events to go to. Like soccer, there's a soccer game on every weekend and their friends are doing it. As a kid who's really frothing on SUP or foiling or even surfing, they've got to be almost backed by their parents, basically. And even if they're backed by their parents, they've got to be events for them to go to. And I think surfing is a good example that when I was growing up, there were plenty of surf events, but the sort of, I guess, the clique I was in, there was your board riders once a month, but in between it, there wasn't a lot, unless you wanted to, you were sponsored and you're going to all these events all around Australia. With foiling and supping, I guess it's easier to run a race. It's easier to run an event. And it's just like getting the word out and organising. And it'll only take, one or two little communities to pull it all together and create that sort of avenue. But I guess it's hard. Insurances, and in Australia, I guess maybe that's the handbrake, the insurances and people running events. There's not a lot of give back, and you've seen the King of the Cut, like a bit of burnout happening, and there's been rumours that maybe the King of the Cut won't even happen next year, which fingers crossed it won't, and I'll reach out to them and see what we can do to keep it running, because I want to have another crack at it.
Keep running.
Yeah,
it's a hard one because we don't have a national sporting body, and I think this is where it all starts, and then it slowly unravels down through the levels. But at what point, where's SUP going to fall under? Is it going to be under Paddle Australia with canoeing and all that kind of stuff, or is Surfing Australia? Like, I think Surfing Australia really needs to make a decision.
Yeah.
And do you want it or not? And sever it, because we did used to have the SUP Groms running alongside Surf Groms, which was like a grassroots program for kids to get into paddleboarding, and I thought that was fantastic. And unfortunately, that got dropped. And there's lots of kids learning to SUP now through schools and camps and all that kind of stuff. So it's there. It's just having a body to actually, or someone above us all to say, this is what the sport's going to be, this is what it's going to look like, and whether that's just flat water SUP in Australia like they're doing in Europe, and that comes under its own, and surfing stays under Surfing Australia. It just needs something. And I kind of feel like it's our generation, especially now with COVID going on and things that have changed racing setup. I think we've got an opportunity where we should all start talking a bit more about it and how we can create opportunity for our sport in the future, because that's how things change in the world, is when people work hard at something. And I feel like, the athletes of your generation that are starting to age now and will probably stop competing as much. Now it's time to get on the computer and talk and let's make something for this sport, or we're going to lose it.
Yeah,
which
for
will be
sure.
and it'll just be recreation.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's transferring there's so many people, like SUP is booming in the recreation side of things, but there's like, I say to people, oh, I used to race more. I race the stand-up paddleboards, and like, oh, are there races on them? It's just no even awareness that it's even a thing. So it's like, how do we get recreation through to competition, I guess? And it's not that important, but it's like, for the sport side of it, it'd be unreal to have. I'm not sure what it is, and I know Surfing New South Wales have actually, I'm working with them just recently on trying to create a few events in New South Wales, trying to get, grommets, but to like, schools to come and do events, and try to tie it in with like a bit of a battle of the, SUP clubs as well. So it's like, this here in New South Wales, they got battle of the board riders. So like battle of the SUP clubs, and just maybe that'll sort of, light a bit of a fire. And if there's, work with the SUP clubs that are already there, because I think you really do need to work with grassroots events and get school kids that are, open to it and wanting to paddle, seeing these SUP clubs battle. Oh, that's what we can be working towards. That'd be cool to do next year, and maybe that's the way to do it. But it's not a clean. How do you create a sport? How do you create a pathway for a sport? And that's the question.
But we do have all these other sports that have started before us. So, even surfing and surf lifesaving. And, that's the hard one too, surf lifesaving, because I'm involved in a local club. We're really remote. So if I can run a junior squad and I can get kids paddling up there, you can do it anywhere. We traveled 12 hours yesterday just to get to the next town.
Yeah.
I've kind of lost my train of thought there. Just getting the smaller stuff happening and those bridging events. Like, we used to run a little sub fest where it was a paddle around an island, 5K. And I think the couple of years that we ran it, we had like 50 competitors, and the kids were paddling and everyone had a great time, whatever board you had. Some were on cruises, some were on surf subs. But just that basic fun stuff to get people start moving. And I think what we've done is we've started at the top with the big event, and then there's nothing underneath it. So we need to start building the opposite way. And grassroots and sports and kids is where it all happens. And it takes time. So you've got 10 years to get these kids up to levels where it's elite, and time to kind of find a pathway for them. Yeah. But I hope so, because there's some amazing athletes, and I don't want to lose my kids to other sports, but it's going to happen eventually. A couple are going to boarding school and they're looking at rowing and stuff like that. So at least they're staying in the ocean. But maybe eventually surf clubs would take on the flat water or like the BOP stuff. And I would like to see surf clubs actually use SUPs more for rescue in general anyway. I just don't understand.
Yeah, I think the inflatables, especially in and out through the waves, make a lot of sense.
And if like places like us where we don't have big surf zones but we're still on patrol, you've got SUPs to get really fast. If you don't have an IRB, they're much faster to get out through the flat water. That type of thing. I'd love to see, surf club maybe using them, and then that'll help the sport build, and then it can become part of that surf lifesaving with BOP and marathon. I don't know.
Yeah, so many options, but it's just, I guess we got to try to pick and stick, don't we, and follow through with it. And the grassroots things where it's got to start, and following on from there.
Yeah, I guess if there's anyone else that's watching this and has grommies that are getting into it, or grommy foilers, or work with some kids that are interested in the sport, like, I'm keen to talk to anyone that's doing similar stuff. And maybe that's where we start, is just like start communicating with each other around Australia and figure out what we're all doing, and then we can meet up and do a Coach Casey camp or something,
Yeah, no, I'd love that.
And that might be where it all starts.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. For sure, yeah, definitely anyone who's listening and wants to reach out and create some sort of SUP or foil event, we'd be stoked to do it and get the Groms involved and create a future for the sport that we're enjoying right now. And I know you've got to go, Crackers, so I'm not going to hold you up for any longer. But thanks for your time, and thanks Marcus as well for joining for a bit of a King of the Cut debrief, and Casey catch up. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah, thanks, and enjoy your time. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all that.
Yeah, so, you too.
Yeah,
you too.
No, it's been good.
Hopefully
to catch
the waves are frothy. Ho ho ho.
Love it. All right. See ya. Welcome to the Casey catch up, and this. Do I have to move it? You can walk past now, you stink bug.